And former Deputy Chief of Staff to President George W. Bush and Fox News contributor Karl Rove. Karl, good to see you.
Good morning.
Is this the right move in your view, the president reaching across the aisle to get this strategy and reform passed?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. You're not going to get comprehensive immigration reform or even substantial immigration reform done unless it's done on a bipartisan basis. You're going to require 60 votes in the Senate. Nothing will allow you to do this under budget reconciliation procedures and do it with 51. So, look, I see this as the administration's opening bid. Here's the wish list of everything we'd like to do. My suspicion is if we get legislation, it's likely to differ substantially from this comprehensive 70-point list.
Karl, Steve Forbes here. Is there any chance the Democrats will pass immigration legislation, or are they just going to keep it as a political issue as they've had for 15 years?
Yeah, like, will they participate in governing, right?
Yeah, well, Steve's got a very good point. I mean, having been through this battle myself a couple of times, I remember this young, earnest senator from Illinois who sat in the cabinet room and told President Bush, I'm entirely in favor of immigration, comprehensive immigration reform. I support your bill. And then several months later, turned around and voted for every killer amendment offered up by the Democrats to get it, and his name was Barack Obama. So I have a lot of sympathy for Steve's viewpoint that the Democrats like this for political purposes. And think about President Obama himself. He had a huge majority the first 2 years in office. He could have done anything he wanted on this issue and did zip. But I think I think this issue of the Dreamers and of DACA is going to require both parties to get serious about doing something to at least deal with that problem. And in order to deal with that problem, you're going to probably have both sides saying we want to have a couple of other items tossed in there as well.
Yeah, Karl, we want to talk about the policy, obviously DACA, as well as tax reform, and I guess health care is still alive. But let's talk about first what happened this weekend. This feud between the president and Senator Bob Corker seems to be heating up. President Trump slammed the senator this weekend after he said last week that Secretaries Tillerson, Mattis, and White House Chief of Staff Kelly, quote, separate our country from chaos. Then the president tweeted this over the weekend. Senator Bob Corker begged me to endorse him for re-election in Tennessee. I said no. He dropped out, said he could not win without my endorsement. He also wanted to be Secretary of State. I said no thanks. He is also largely responsible for the horrendous Iran deal. Hence, I would fully expect Corker to be a negative voice and stand in the way of our great agenda. Didn't have the guts to run. Of course, then Senator Corker responded on Twitter. He said this: it's a shame the White House has become an adult daycare center. Someone obviously missed their shift this morning. And then the president fires back again, saying Bob Corker gave us the Iran deal, and that's about it. We need health care. We need tax cuts, reform. We need people that can get the job done. So, Karl, what about this? The president needs Corker's support to push through tax reform, doesn't he? Does this fight impact the agenda?
Yeah, look, what good did all this do?
I know.
President Trump, in my opinion, should have ignored the comment made last week by Senator Corker. It would have disappeared and been forgotten quickly. But by starting a Twitter war this weekend, what did it accomplish? The president went after Corker. Corker's people went back and said the things the president's saying are untrue. Corker then makes a comment. What good did that do? The acrimony is going to grow. At the end of the day, the president is now going to have somebody who is personally offended by him, who can undermine him in several important ways. And for Corker, every time he takes a position contrary to the administration, people are going to chalk it up not to principle or reasoned judgment, but to this Twitter war. So neither man is well served by this. The president should not, in my opinion, have started it, and Senator Corker should have risen above it.
Quick question, Karl, on the Republicans. Why are they so lousy on this whole tax cut battle? People apologizing because some people are rich.
Because they got bullied.
They're acting like Democrats.
Well, look, a great piece today in the Wall Street Journal by Senator Phil Gramm pointing out, look, the top 10% of the taxpayers pay 71% of the tax burden. And look, the bottom 50% of households pay 3% of the tax burden. And most of the money that powers our federal government is coming from the pockets of wealthier people. So why kill be the kill the goose that lays the golden egg. And Graham made an excellent point. Look, we ought to make a moral argument. I talked about this in my Wall Street Journal piece last Thursday, my regular weekly column. The Republicans had better be prepared to make a moral argument. And one of the moral arguments is there ought to be a limit to how much the government can take from anyone, because if it can take it from some, it can take it from all.
Yeah, it just starts at the top, though, Carl. You have the commander-in-chief, President Trump, telling the Wall Street Journal months ago, well, my rich friends don't mind paying more in taxes. So they act like, again, that the bottom 40%, the bottom 40% in this country get money back from the federal government. Nearly half the people in this country don't pay any income taxes.
And what happened to the whole argument, Dagan, about trickle-down economics, right? For years, I've been hearing about trickle-down economics, that you create an environment for business, you create an environment for the job creators that's attractive, and then they will put more money into the economy. Do they not believe in trickle economics anymore, Karl?
Well, look, the corporate income, the corporate tax, we know something about that. The argument is settled. The economists believe almost universally that most of the cost of the corporate tax is paid by workers in the form of lower wages or less benefits. The only argument is it 75% of the tax or 100% of the tax or some number in between? But there's widespread agreement across the ideological spectrum that the people who pay the tax are primarily the workers who work for those companies, and then consumers who pay it in the form of higher prices.
There you go.
Yeah, look, the administration's got lots of good arguments to make here, and the Republicans in Congress had better be making them and go on the offense rather than just simply allow the Democrats to say, you're a tax cut, for the rich.
Quick prediction, Karl. Are they going to get a good tax bill through?
I think so, but we're not helped by these things like we saw this weekend with the President and Senator Corker. We have a 52-48 margin in the Senate. We can only afford to lose 2 senators, and as you know,
Corker.
Tax bills are. Yeah, well, I'm not certain of that. Okay. I'm not certain of that, but it doesn't make it easier.
Okay, we will leave it there. Karl, good to see you, sir. Thanks so much. Karl Rove joining us there.